Okay, on the previous video, we have a look into what happens to the characteristics of the image if the object is placed more than 2f. And today we're going to look on the other position. So let's start with the first one, where the object is placed exactly at the point of a 2f. So let's see what happens here. Yeah? So I'm going to place the object exactly at a position of a 2f now. That's the object that we have. And I'm again going to use the rule 2 and rule 3. Yeah? We're still going to go with the rule 2 and rule 3. So let's draw the rule 2. Rule 2 says a light ray parallel. Yeah? Sinar cahaya yang selari dengan paksi utama. So we're going to have a parallel light ray. And we know the parallel light ray here will be reflected passing through focal point F. So I'm going to draw a light ray passing through the focal point F here. So let me draw. It is passing through the focal point F here. Now, the next point here, the next thing says here, if you look on the rule number 3, sinar cahaya melalui titik fokus F akan dipantulkan secara selari pula. Ya? So now we have a light ray passing through focal point F. So it's exactly going to pass through focal point F to a point as such, I guess. Okay, so it's going to go somewhere here. And then from there, what happens, we're going to draw another ray diagram here to the point where it's going to meet at here. Now, okay, so we have drawn enough. So let's see what happens here on the drawing here. So for the first one, let me go through. A light ray parallel to principal axis, reflected passing through F point. For the ray number 2, the light ray passing through F, reflected parallel to principal axis. Jadi kita dah ada dua-dua rule here. Okay, kita dah gunakan kedua-dua syarat, and this is where we have the intersection point. Our intersection point is at here, and therefore when I draw the image, what going to happen? The image is formed exactly at the bottom of the object. Jadi image dia terbentuk dekat sini ya. Jadi apa characteristics of the image? What is the characteristics of the image here? If you look, the size is same. We still use the 2 box here, and it's still going to be 2 box, so it is same size. It is going to be same size, but however it is inverted now, this Songsang. And remember, anything forming in front of the screen is a real image. So this will be the characteristics of the image formed when the object is equals to 2f point. Okay, so 3 characteristics. Let's go back and write down here. On the next drawing here, the object will be placed, okay, the object now will be placed between the 2F and F. Dia di antara titik F dan 2F. So let's say I'm going to place it in the middle, but in your case, it can be anything, anywhere, as long as between the 2F and the F here. So let's use rule number 2 again. Okay, rule number 2. The rule number 2 says a light ray parallel to principal axis. A light ray parallel to principal axis is reflected passing through focal point. Reflected passing through focal point F. Okay, that's the rule number 1. Whereas the rule number 2 says a light ray passing through focal point. Now let's let the light ray to pass through the focal point itself. So from the object, then it is going to be reflected parallel to principal axis. I'm going to also join this line to see where does the intersection point going to happen. The intersection is happening somewhere at here. So this is the intersection point, and we know this intersection point is where the image would have been formed. So the image is exactly formed at here. Now, what is the characteristics of the image? Again, now look at the length of the red line and the blue line. And the blue line was the object, and that's the image here. So now the object and the image have been magnified, membesar, magnified, that's for, of course, magnified. Next, it's still real because it's formed in front of the screen, so it's going to be still real. And again, the next one here, it is going to be inverted image, so we write down as an inverted image. So these are the 3 characteristics. These are the 3 characteristics of the image formed when the object is between F and 2F, real, magnified, and inverted. So let's go back here and write down. For the next one, the object will be placed exactly at a focal point. Yeah? So we're going to place the object exactly at a focal point. So that's the position of the object on the focal point. Now look at here, class. Can I use rule number 1? Yes, rule number 1 can be still used because from the object, light ray going to be parallel light ray passing through, and light ray parallel here, what going to happen will be reflected passing through the focal point. So that's perfect. We are done with the first ray diagram. Now, the second ray diagram. If I'm going to use the rule number 3, the rule number 3 says light ray ya, sinar cahaya yang melalui titik fokus F. Tapi nampak kat sini ya kelas, titik fokus F kat bawah. Okay, titik fokus F kat sini, and that's your object. So can the object now pass through focal point? It wouldn't be able to pass through, yeah? Look at the black line that I'm going to draw here. From the object, if it's passing through the focal point, it's going to go in a straight line. It cannot hit the mirror at all. So therefore, in this case here, rule number 3 cannot be used. So what we do instead, we go with the rule number 1. Rule number 1 is easy. A light ray which is passing through the C point sama dengan 2F. Yeah? So all this is equals to C here. So what's going to happen, I'm going to draw a line. This line here as though passing through the C point. Okay, we know the light ray that passing through a C point. So what's going to happen here, a light ray which is passing through C point and to the object, okay, is reflected in this way here. It is reflected on the same direction. But what's going to happen here, if I'm going to extend these two lines on the behind here, what we're going to see, we're going to form a two lines which is parallel to each other. So if we are really having a look here between the green and the yellow line that I've drawn here, both the lines are parallel to each other. Okay, it's going to be a parallel line, and these two parallel line wouldn't meet again. So again, rule number 1 is quite easy. Rule number 1 is the yellow line here. A light ray parallel to principal axis reflected passing through F. Rule number 1 here. And then rule number 2 actually. And another one is I'm using the rule number 1, which says that light ray passing through the C point. Yeah? A light ray which is passing through the C point will be reflected back on the same direction. So it's reflected back on the same direction. Therefore, what's going to happen? We are forming a two parallel lines. Means what's going to happen? Does these two lines going to meet each other? Nope, they're not going to meet each other. Therefore, image going to be formed at an infinity. We're not so sure where does these two lines going to meet. So image form at infinity. Image form at infinity, but remember it is forming behind the screen. Yeah, so anything forming behind the screen in a mirror is a virtual image, so it's going to be a virtual image, and of course it's magnified because we don't know where does it going to be formed, so I can still say it is a magnified virtual image which is formed at an infinity. So key points here. Okay, for the next one, we're going to place the object less than F here. So if you look here, I'm placing my object which is going to be less than F. So it's exactly lesser than F. That's the position of the object that you have here. Let me draw the first rule here. Rule number 1, which says light ray passing through the C point will be reflected back on the same direction. So as though passing through C point, reflect back on same direction. And of course, this time we're going to form behind the screen. We're not so sure where does it going to meet. I'm just going to extend. On the other end, another rule says a light ray parallel. Rule number 2, which says that, okay, this one must have a arrow showing in and out, yeah? Insert and out. The next one is the light ray parallel to principal axis. So we're going to have a light ray which is parallel to principal axis is reflected, okay, passing through F point. So I'm going to let the light ray to pass through F point, okay, and I'm going to extend this imaginary line behind here to see where does it intersection occurs. So we're going to have some intersection at this point. At the same time, light ray parallel is reflected, passing through F point here. We have an intersection, but the intersection is exactly happening behind the screen. Yeah, means the image now is forming behind the screen. Remember, anything behind the screen is a virtual image. We always show a virtual image which is a dotted line. That's why anything formed behind the mirror, right? I used everything in a dotted line. Dotted line exactly showing us is an imaginary kind of a virtual kind of a line or imaginary lines here. So what will be the characteristic? Image now is upright. You see the arrow is upright. So image is going to be upright. Magnified. Magnified, of course, it is magnified. At the same time, it's also going to be virtual. So that's the 5 different position and the characteristics of image. For u less than 2f, u equals to 2f. U between f and 2f, u equals to f, and u less than f. On the next video, we're going to look on the characteristics of the convex mirror.